like that. Hey everybody! LaGina and Mel here with the Melanin Minds Art and Mental Health Road Trip 2022 LA. This is our third artist talk back, but it's artist 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Because Mel and I are both artists in the show. And that's how we came to deciding to do a Melanin Minds road trip. But first, Mel's going to tell us a story about a Melanin Minds. Like, how did it come about? What happened? See, what had happened was...
What had happened was we were two solo women of color founders in the middle of a pandemic trying to create businesses and kind of losing our minds a little bit. But we connected on Instagram. We started following and supporting each other's businesses. And in the process, we really connected over our mental health journey.
Absolutely.
And our need for mental health professionals that look like us, amplifying them, and just normalizing these spaces where mental health is a part of every conversation.
Yeah, so that happened. And then, fast forward, this is our second year. It really is just 1 year plus a couple months, but it's our second conference, our first road trip,
our second event
year, and here we are. So why did we pick art?
Because we needed artists. I feel like we realized during the pandemic the importance of art and artists, and we flocked to things like entertainment and art and expression through that way when everything else around us wasn't really going the way that we wanted it to. So and us both being both creative artists, like we work in art every day, we express ourselves, we use art as therapy, so it just made sense for us to hit the road for something that was so accessible, right? Also in our communities, we want to make sure Black art, brown art is accessible and not just seen as a luxury, or in the same way that self-care is not seen as a luxury, or it's seen as a luxury instead of the birthright that it is.
Yes, instead of the birthright. So we'll do our best to talk up because we know that we have our live and we have our audience and then we have our online people. So we'll do our best. So I'm just going to ask you about your art journey, right? Because the whole time that we were curating this, we really want to make sure that the artists that we curate into this space are comfortable talking about their mental health journey, how things are going, and how it ties into your art. So talk about when you started identifying as an artist, and then how does that tie into mental health? Like, when did you realize that, oh shit, I'm doing this for like some type of release or therapy?
Yes, it was definitely during the pandemic. I picked up my iPad and Procreate and was just playing around a lot with it, and I ended up creating these digital collages that were like messages to myself, things that I needed to hear throughout the pandemic in a way that was like beautiful to look at and something that maybe others could identify with too. So the more I played around with that, I made a few more messages to myself, and then someone asked me, my boy Lorenzo, he asked me, how have you found peace, or like how do you find peace in this time? And that question fucked me up for several days because I'm like, I don't know if I have an answer. Am I peace? Because the world around us was so not that. But I think I found my answer in that I've found peace in the chaos somehow, or the chaos found peace in me. And really just making sure that I keep my art separate from my day job, which is also creative, and really just using it for features, for my own artist brand, and keeping that very separate from where I make my bread and butter and all the stress that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a common theme throughout today when I've been doing these artist talkbacks is really talking about the separation of your art and the business. Because a lot of our artists, including myself, we sell our art pieces, and there's this cap table of, is this creative or do I need this to make money? And sometimes when the two intertwine, it takes away from a little bit of the creativeness. So you were talking about separating the work element from your creative element, even though you're creative at work too. So how do you keep those separate?
I really just try to make sure if I'm doing digital collage art and making sure that I actually do it outside of work, definitely making sure that I make time for it and that it is separate from my work time, and keeping those spaces very separate. I don't even like to do work in the same place that I sleep. Like I keep all those things very separate. So I keep my space and my energy very separate. I make it very intentional when I am making collage art. And then if it's like for either commission or for a feature, yeah, I really like to tell a story with it, and especially when it's series. I just love. I'm a Virgo, so anytime I can
Shout out to all the
identify
Virgos.
patterns and create a series out of something,
You do.
I love to do that.
Yeah. I think for me, when I think about like keeping the two separated, originally when I went on my like art journey and I realized like, oh, okay, I've always been a creative. I've always been an artist since I was a kid. Like I started doing ceramics and all of those things. I was the only kid that was allowed on in the base like core and ceramic thing on the Air Force Base by myself without my parents. Like it was a whole thing. We got special permission for me to do it. It's fun. But as I grew up and I started bartending in Austin, and some of my clients would see my work, they were like, "Oh, you should start doing this. You should sell it. You should do art shows." And I was like, "I'm not sure I should because I do my art for therapy, and it's therapeutic. And if I'm doing therapy and it's sold, like, does that take away from the creativeness? Do I start caring about what people think too much?" And so even there's a nuance in creating and making a business out of it, because artists, we often have to understand that it is a business. So how do you keep those two separate? And really mine is just making sure that when I don't want to paint or I don't want to create, I just don't. And then when I do, I just do. And that includes, like, I have a piece called like 2.5 or 4 years in the making. And it's because it took me 4 years to make the piece. It took me 4 years because I'd paint and I'm like, I don't like it. And I go back and paint some more and it'd be like, I'm not done. But I never really liked it. And it was because I was journeying in the exact thing that I was creating. And so I didn't like it because I didn't like my journey at the time. So you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, like, all of my pieces have like in-depth stories to them and everything else. And I'm excited to celebrate like the mental health element of this, because I think a lot of times, you see paintings hanging in galleries and in shows, and there's like 500 people around, and the artist doesn't get to tell you. You're like, I wonder what they were thinking when they put planets on their head, or like, what is that? Like, and you want to ask the questions, and you get a little small write-up that you can read, but it's not the same as sitting with an artist. And one thing we do here at Melanin Minds is we try to make everything super interactive, including at our conference, right? We had yoga and breath work and sound bowls, but also like the therapy sessions were tangible and they were taught backs, and so we were sitting on stage. So it's the same aspect. So for here, when we did the artist next, it's so you can sit down on a couch with the artist and talk about what their piece is about. So this right here, I've seen this piece on Insta. And so when you printed it out for the art show, I was like, well, show your art. And then I realized it was you.
That's me.
So I want you to tell me about this piece. Tell me what you were thinking about this piece. Tell me the time frame you created and all that stuff.
So this piece was definitely heavily inspired by a small business called Eclectic Soul Boutique. I got a notebook from them that was like this image. It was a woman. She had a moon necklace on. She had planets on it. I'm like, that is me. I have a necklace just like that. That's me. So I, of course, brought the notebook. And it wasn't until, again, the pandemic when I started diving into digital collage and getting more into it. It wasn't until then that I really had a use for it other than, playing around with it. So I started using it as a form of expression and telling myself these messages. And what ended up prompting this specific piece was, again, my boy Lorenzo asked me, had I found peace, like, or in this time, how do you find peace? And I wasn't sure if I had. And it fucked me up for several days. And once I started creating this piece based on that notebook, I was like, okay, here's the answer. Because we look at the universe, and my moniker, Multifaceted, is all about embracing all the many sides of us. I am large. I contain multitudes. I contain the universe within me. And the universe, universe is ever expanding. The universe is constant chaos and the life that comes out of it and the beauty of all that. So I was like, I don't know. I may have found peace in just being in fucking chaos and surviving through that. Like, maybe that is my peace. Or maybe my peace is knowing throughout all the chaos within me is all the peace that I need. So my answer to that was I found peace in the chaos somehow, or maybe it's the chaos that found peace in me.
All during the pandemic.
All during the
COVID.
pandemic, yes. Yeah.
COVID-19.
Woo, that
Well,
thing.
yeah, so I can relate in the peace and the balance of things. So my piece, it's called 400 Years in the Sea. And right around, of course, the pandemic again is about the 400th. I don't know if we call it anniversary or the realization, because it goes probably 100 years before and 200 years after. Let's not act like there was a stop date and a start date. But and then Wakanda Wakanda forever. I watched it in that piece at the end where the cousins are sitting and he's like, my ancestors did dope see, and I started looking it up and I did research around it. And at the time, I had just moved to Houston, and I was hanging out with this African dude, and we kept having these conversations around how the United States, being black and being African, are two different things, and how very often and very white predominant industries and in careers, sometimes they'll put an African person to watch over the black group. Is the good black to watch over the black group. And all of those things just made me really think of the 400 years plus, minus, plus around, that we've lost our ancestral knowledge. The people that never made it over, were they strong or were they weak? Because death by suicide can be viewed different ways by different people. Was it suicide? Was it courageous? All the things that is a Black American you have to go through in your angst, and it doesn't get acknowledged. So this is of the chains of an ancestor that dropped down, and there's no bones and skulls because the world keeps going, the ocean keeps moving, the currents wash things over, life covers it up, but the chains are usually still there, right? Because that's a metal, it's not organic like your body. Like, how they say give it back to the earth. So this is about being in the sea and still being able to see the shackles and the chains 400 years later, and then the things and the creatures moving around. And at the time, these were all my living family members directly related to me. So my mom, me, my brother, my sister, my nephew, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, the 7 jellyfish in the sea. And they're beautiful, but they sting. So it's like super deep. When you talk about it, and that's all my paintings, because sometimes it is stressful having to talk about the things all the time. Or the thing you're talking about, because it's the mainstream thing, isn't always what you actually feel. Like, this wasn't the mainstream thing at the time. The mainstream thing was Breonna, George, the other killings, defunding the police, COVID-19, should be not, da 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 da. But I was feeling this because I still feel robbed, because around that time was also when people were like, oh, history's not right. And you're like, no shit.
It's like, I'm so surprised. I'm learning so much.
Right.
I never.
Like, the Alamo was not one. Hashtag. You know what I mean? And so for me, this was just something I needed to release. And this particular piece of art was able to let me do that in the moment. And I've never drawn a jellyfish. I didn't look it up. And it's so weird because that's what started manifesting. I didn't plan it. And this is just what started coming. And that's how my art usually takes place. My artistry is about and then I, and then the way I see art and artistry. And so that's where the name came from. It's my brand, my brand launching back into my original art brand. And so it's scary, but it's fun. So that's how we got to this road trip, right? It's because we wanted us as artists to be able to tell those stories about just one piece. It means so much. And so yeah, what else do we have to share?
Oh gosh, what
everything.
Else
we just won a grant. So we just won our second award in our grant in the same day.
Yes.
So shout out to Pulse the magazine for they just had their 5-year anniversary last night, actually.
Okay.
And they were doing the awards, and so shout out for them for recognizing the work that we're doing in the Houston community and beyond, right? Because Houston's like the original spot where we do the conference, but Mel lives in LA, so we're going to always be in LA. We love Chicago, and we're looking for other places to road trip. Our second leg of the road trip, you want to talk?
Yes, coming up next month, which is Black Fine Art Month in the city of Chicago. So we are so excited to partner with Black Fine Art Month and Pigment Magazine.
Yes.
To bring our road trip stop number 2 to Chicago, October 13th through the 16th. We will be there, and we will be showcasing local artists, our artists in residence, and we will have community resource day, and it'll be great.
It's going to be amazing. Yeah, and we just got the Cube, which is a radio and podcast app that focuses on queer folks and their podcasts. So they're going to be partnering with us, and we're just going to be doing a lot of stuff in the space, and just celebrating more artists, amplifying them and their stories. If y'all want to reach out and support Melanin Minds, go to melaninminds.org. That is melaninminds.org. And you can find many ways to support us. You can even DM us with some cool resources for mental health that you may have. We love beefing up our resource library and all of that stuff. And just follow us, support us, share what we're doing. This is becoming like a real thing and a real movement and a real change maker as we approach mental health for melanin people in this holistic way, for the people that are curating spaces like this to the practitioners we're bringing in. Our whole goal is to continue celebrating and amplifying people in this space and letting people know that the work is already being done, and we're just helping amplify and supporting it more. Yeah. Mental health is not a faux pas in our communities anymore. We want to make sure that people know that. So, y'all, thanks for tuning in to this Artist Talk Back 3 and 4, or 3 and 4, or 3 and 4, 3 and 4, all of it. All right, y'all. So, LaGina, Mel, we're checking out from the Melanin Minds Mental Health and Art Road Trip 2022, stop number 1. All right, y'all. Thank you, and we will see you in Chicago. Bye.
Bye, y'all.